know we've all heard the term God forsaken. We've all probably at some times in our lives felt as if God had forgotten about us, that God was not present. And I don't know if you have felt that way, but I know I have. I grew up what I would describe as a daddy's girl. I had this incredible dad who really just showed all of us in our family unconditional love. He was doting. He was always there to listen and to help. And a few years ago, several years ago actually, he was had a disease that we knew he would not recover from. We knew that it would take his life. And through that time, I remember praying that when the beginning that he would be healed, and he wasn't. I prayed that his suffering would be limited, or that he wouldn't suffer, and he did. And then toward the end of his life, I prayed that God would take him, and it seemed as if his suffering would just continue and continue and continue. And so one day I had one of those sort of fist shaking conversations with God where I was angry and I felt totally forsaken by God. I felt God had forsaken our family and my father. I had one of those conversations that we read about in the Psalms, but we don't think that we will ever be one of those people. And so one day I just said to God, I said, God, gosh, I don't know what's going on here. We've prayed for Dad to be healed and he hasn't. We've prayed that he wouldn't suffer and he has. We've prayed for you to take his life so that his suffering will end, and he lingers and lingers and lingers. And then I said something to God. I said, God, are you even there? Do you hear us? Do you care? Do you answer our prayers? And then I said, God, I would love an answer, but I don't really expect one anymore. And in that moment, I grabbed my Bible and I was headed off to the gym to work out. And I got to the gym and I got on the Stairmaster, and as I was going along, I opened up my Bible, and out of it flitted this page, and it just kind of, as it was floating down from the Stairmaster, I reached down to try to catch this page before it hit the ground. And it was a devotional. It had been a page I had torn out of the upper room, I bet about a year before. And as I looked down at it, it became the answer to my prayer. Because in it was a verse from Isaiah. It says, sing for joy, O heavens. Exult, O earth. Break forth, O mountains, into singing. For God has remembered his people. God has shown compassion on his people. But Zion says, my God has forgotten me. My God has forsaken me. And then God says, can a mother forget her nursing child, or show no compassion for the child of her womb? Even these forget, yet I will not forget you. See, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. And in that moment, in reading that verse, I realized that was an answer to my prayer. And I felt in that moment God's love and mercy and care and compassion flowing down. And I knew that God heard our cries, and that God answered our prayers, and that God cared for my father, and that God would take care of my father. And in the days and the weeks to come, it's as if God's presence was everywhere in that moment. And I knew that my dad was not God forsaken, and neither was I. It was truly an incredible moment. We are not the only ones who feel as if we are sometimes God forsaken, or if God has somehow turned God's back on us, or that God doesn't hear our prayers or our cries. Jesus felt that way too. So in Matthew and Mark's Gospels, Jesus only says one thing. He cries out in a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? Even Jesus feels in this moment as if God has turned God's back on him. And yet, Jesus knows in his own heart that even though he feels forsaken by God, that he isn't forsaken by God. The wonderful thing about Jesus saying this on the cross, admitting this, that even in his absolute darkest moment, He feels as if he is God forsaken. The wonderful thing about that is that because it gives us permission to be able to be honest with God. It gives us the permission to know that sometimes it's okay if we feel that way too. Matthew and Mark's gospel depict Jesus' words, my God, why have you forsaken me?" in his own native tongue of Aramaic. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Why in other places don't we hear much Aramaic from Jesus? And I think it's important that these writers included this here. There's a great reason for that, and that is because they want us, as we stand around the cross and we listen to these words, that we realize that we are hearing the intimacy of the actual words that Jesus prays out loud to God. These words draw us into the intimacy of our relationship with Christ as we hear him speak in his own language and his own tongue and cry out to God, my God, why have you forsaken me?" What is interesting about these words of Jesus on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" is that they actually come from a psalm. They're a prayer that Jesus cries out to God. And it comes from Psalm 22. So hear these words. My God, why have you forsaken me?" What is interesting about this is that if Jesus had kept going, he would also say words that we sometimes want to say out loud. Why are you so far from helping me? From the words of my groaning, oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer me, and by night, but find no rest. Jesus would have known this psalm backward and forward. He would have sung it when he went to synagogue. They would have said this psalm around the dinner table. He knows he really isn't abandoned because he knows what comes next in the psalm. This is really a psalm of trust. The psalm says these words, and Jesus knows these words. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. Jesus' words from the cross reflect more from Psalm 22. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights. These are close to the same words that the mockers offer to Jesus as they surround him on the cross. But here is the beautiful part of this psalm that Jesus knows. On you I was cast from my birth, and since my mother bore me, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near and there is no one to help. Jesus knows the rest of the words. If Jesus had had the strength to keep talking, to keep saying the rest of the psalm, to keep singing, others might have joined in these words. For he did not despise or abhor the affliction of the afflicted. He did not hide his face from me, but he heard when I cried to him. Jesus knows and trusts that God hears his words and his cries. He knows that God is actually near. Jesus knows the entire psalm, just like he knows the entire arc of history, and he knows the entire arc of your life and my life. He knows the darkness that we have there. And these words are spoken as words not of defeat, but words of victory that we can go to and claim in our own darkest moments. Listen to the rest of this psalm. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations shall worship before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. To him, indeed, shall all who sleep in the earth bow down. Before him shall bow all who go down to the dust, and I shall live for him. Future generations will be told about the Lord and proclaim his deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying that he has done it. Jesus knows the end of the story. He knows that God is with him, even though he doesn't feel it, and he trusts that he will be delivered, and all the ends of the earth will know that he has come and he has delivered them.